Okay, today is day 77 and I just recorded my whole video and I didn't have the record button on. That was really fucking annoying. Anyways, I'll try and give that all again and see what happens. So this morning I went for a walk with my mum up to the lighthouse in Byron Bay, and on the way back we were nearing the end of our walk and I was talking to Mum about something that I hadn't actually wanted to talk to her about. It was more of the details of what's been happening in my life lately and the kind of hardship and pain and heartache that I've been going through. And I didn't really want to tell my mum about it because she tends to worry a lot and I didn't want to give her more worry. And so I was kind of in the depths of telling her about something because she's felt quite distant from me and I just wanted to kind of reconnect with her after being away for almost a week. And so I was telling her about this thing, and as we were walking, she tripped and fell over and landed on her leg, landed on her bent kind of leg and on her stomach. And it was a really big fall. So my mum is 74 and she's very fit. She goes to the gym twice a week and she's a yoga teacher and she's very, very fit. However, she does have a bit of a vulnerability in her right hip. And so she fell over and immediately she just screamed out and yelled. And then I kind of bent down and we rolled her over and she was just crying, "My hip, my hip, my hip." And she was in pain and she was crying, and I could feel in that moment, I could feel all her fear and her vulnerability come up from that old injury in her hip, which was from a very long time ago. And she was just crying out, "My hip, my hip." And I went into, oh no, my mum, we're in the bush, she's hurt herself, her hip might be broken. What if her hip's broken? I'm gonna have to call the ambulance. I was looking around to see if there's anybody around. There was suddenly nobody around when the whole time in our walk we had been passing people all the time. Suddenly there was nobody and she was crying, and I was trying to figure out what had happened, what was hurting, what was really hurting. Was her hip as bad as she was thinking it was? Because I could feel her fear. I could really feel her fear, like fully present right then, just this fear that her hip was broken. And she was just crying, and I said to her at one stage, just cry, because I could feel this old fear and this old trauma from her hip from a very long time ago, and I could feel her vulnerability and just her absolute breakdown. And I was just encouraging her to cry, but at the same time obviously like trying to figure out whether she had broken something. And then her knee was really sore and her foot was sore as well. She'd really like fallen over and landed on her leg in a bad way on this really steep step. And she kept on crying, and I was like just trying to talk to her. At one stage I was just like, "Okay, Mum, just like calm down a little bit, just try to breathe, just like calm down, just settle yourself a bit." And she was finally able to settle herself and kind of come back into her body. Instead of being out there in the fear, she came back into her body and calmed herself down, and then just calmed, and then slowly she realized, she kind of straightened her leg a little bit and she was like, "Okay, it's all right, I'm actually all right." So she was able to get up and she was able to walk, and her hip is fine, so that's all good. However, what I was reflecting on was just the way that our fear can just paralyze us. So our fear can really just like take over and paralyze us from and basically create a like a big fat blind spot as to what's actually really going on in reality. So Mum was so afraid that she had broken her hip, and I was so afraid that she had broken her hip, that we were just in that fear together, really in there, just totally afraid that that's what had happened, when in reality her hip was actually okay and her knee was okay, her foot is actually a bit sore and her shin is a bit sore. that's more where she got hurt. However, the fear that she experienced in that moment was so all-consuming, and there wasn't really any room for anything else in that moment. And, you know, my fear was totally present there as well. As she's broken her hip, I have to get a ambulance, I can't carry her, how am I going to do this? And it was just so interesting to have that fear like just suddenly come up like so strongly and totally take over our whole psyche, until I was able to suggest and just like help her to calm down and come back into her body. Just like, calm down, mum, calm down, come back into your body. And I could feel her whole body, just like all her muscles in her body completely relaxed, because she was just like, ooh, like this. All her muscles in her body completely relaxed, her pelvis relaxed, and then she could breathe. And then she checked into her body and she's like, actually, I can straighten my leg, my hip's all right. And so, you know, I was thinking, because I was talking about fear and paddling out in the surf the other day, and how we can kind of keep our focus on the horizon line and just, you know, get through, focus on the horizon line, just get there. But how do we actually, you know, how do we actually swipe that blind spot aside when we're just like engulfed in our fear? How do we do that? So fear is a survival instinct, and when we're in our fear, we're just kicked into full survival instinct. And so how we can do that, that's also, the fear is very much in here. So if it's a construct in our mind a lot of the time, the fear of what might have happened or what could happen, that's a construct in our mind. It actually doesn't belong in our body. It's something that we're creating in our mind. So the way to get out of that fear and to break that cycle, break that loop, break that all-encompassing little fucking television screen that's playing on in our head, is to come back in our body, because it's up here, it's in the head, it's actually out of our body. So coming back into our body by remembering to breathe. And the thing is, you know, being able to remember to breathe in that moment. And luckily I was there with my mum. I was able to be present enough and just say, breathe, mum, just breathe, like just come back into your body, just quieten yourself down. And so that kind of broke the loop of her fear. So, you know, when that kind of stuff happens, we do get taken out of our body. And the way that we can come back into our body is with breath. So the breath of life, the ha, the Hawaiians call it the ha, the breath of life, which obviously breathes life back into our body. It brings us back into our body, and then we can, you know, actually the fear can lose its grasp on us so much when we breathe back into our body and start to be present, and then relax our body. You know, I could feel my mum's body like all tense, and then I could feel it just kind of relax, and her pelvis dropped, her pelvis relaxed, everything relaxed. And then she was able to be consciously aware of what she was doing, consciously aware of her body, of how her body was feeling, her sensations, and then she had control over her mind and control over the fear, and then she could come back and be, you know, present with what was actually really happening in her body, and was able to straighten her leg out and then see that no, her hip is okay, and she could get up and walk. So just by breathing, just by, you know, being encouraged to relax, come back into your body, feel your body, let go, and then she could move through that fear. So it was actually a really horrible experience, but it's definitely helped me, you know, understand that more, and how we can just be so consumed by our fear and we actually stop breathing. We stop breathing, our body tenses up, and life stops. But if we can bring life back in with the breath, it'll allow us to relax our body. That's why in Hawaii and many other cultures, the Hawaiians, they call the ha is the breath of life. And that's why they revere it so much, because it's so important. They actually call white people hale, which means those who don't breathe, because often we find ourselves stuck in our breath. So working with the breath is a really, really important practice. So that's day 77.